I have my gripes with Anne Widdicome and with GBNews, but every so often, of course, even an organisation and a person that you don't particularly approve of sums something up brilliantly. And the GB News interview with Anne Widdicome last night was smack on. I think it could have gone a little bit further. I think one of the problems that Anne Widdicome identifies is that all of this issue, and there's a number of issues actually. If you unpick them, there's the identity of the person who was asking for photographs and paying money. There's and sitting in his boxer shorts apparently without a tie on. There's the fact that people are quite casually calling him a criminal and a pervert, which is wrong. He is innocent until proven guilty, and certainly he shouldn't be called names until at least he's been charged with a crime. There is a potential crime in the background, and simply because somebody is 17 does not mean that photographs can be taken of them or exchanged or possessed. That's one issue. The second issue is how much the BBC knew, and this again was raised this morning on breakfast television on the BBC. But it's with the background of the Savile case and the Bashir case, and how much common knowledge there was that this was going on, and then the party that this person attended with BBC executives, surely if it was already known that there was an issue, he should have been advised not to attend the party. It looks bad, the optics are bad. But what Anne Widdicome doesn't go on to do is to draw a conclusion about the DCMS or the CMS and its failure to properly look at the issue of control by TV and by TV executives. And they had an opportunity to do this in 2019 when they were looking at the out-of-control issues in ITV with Love Island and Jeremy Kyle. And that was casually stopped because of Boris's election and never restarted. And indeed, all control was then handed to Ofcom. So if you write a letter to the DCMS today, you will be referred to Ofcom. Ofcom will refer you to the DCMS, and it goes round and round in circles because nobody wants to take responsibility for the lack of control of the controllers. The controllers are out of control and nobody wants to take control of that. I laugh about it, but it's a very serious issue, and it's led in the reality TV world to over 50 deaths. And constantly it's being seen on the headlines about ITV, about the BBC. It lies behind the story of Philip Schofield. It lies behind the story in the BBC emerging at the moment. It is the same issue. And I shall certainly be writing to my MP about this, but I would encourage you to write to your MPs too. This is about the failure of the DCMS as well as everything else. The complete casual approach of individuals like Lucy Fraser, who they just don't give a damn about their brief. They don't give a damn, and they aren't prepared when they go into the committee meetings to answer questions. They are as prepared as Suella Braverman when she does it. I think also this automatically impacts on the funding model, and that's the bit that people really don't want to say at the moment, but it does. And GB News is only too quick to point this out, and Anne Widdicome, of course. The funding model, the license fee, in this program here, they talk about it removes and dilutes the credibility of the annual tax.
What are the potential implications for the BBC in this story? Well, first of all, let me say that I do share some of Michael Crick's reservations, which were expressed earlier. Yes, you did make a great point at the end of saying these were only allegations, but you had actually let slip that you thought him a pervert. No, we don't know that. We don't know that. At the moment, it's got to be innocent until proved guilty. And that puts the BBC in a very difficult position. And I don't understand why it's taken them all this time to call in the police, quite honestly, because that seems to me they could have handed the responsibility over to the law enforcement agency fairly early on. Don't understand why the 7-week gap. Now, there may be reasons for it. There may be that there are things they want to check. It is an extraordinary story. I don't know why they've done this, but if what then happens is that this man is named, and I would expect that also to happen in fairly short order now, that when the man is named, if what then happens is that it is shown that there was a cause for concern and that the allegations stand up, then I think the Beeb is in big trouble simply because it took so long. If, on the other hand, the allegations don't stand up, the Beeb will be able to say, well, there you are. We had our doubts all along. So I think it really depends on the outcome. But the thing with the Jimmy Savile case was too many of them knew what was going on. They knew what was going on. With the Martin Bashir case, exactly the same thing. They knew that there were allegations of forged bank statements. I mean, dear heaven, how much more serious can you get? They knew that, and yet they did nothing. And I think the same thing goes with this story of this individual partying with BBC bosses, if indeed that happened. Now, I can understand why they hadn't named him and they were carrying on investigating, but you'd think that in basic self-preservation alone, the BBC would have said, don't come to this party, keep a low profile. Apparently they didn't.
Anne, absolutely fair what you've had to say about my take at 10. It's certainly all about opinions. That's what this show represents. And you're absolutely right. You are innocent until proven guilty. All of this could disappear like a puff of smoke, but it may not. To defend the BBC, they have said they first became aware of a complaint in May, but new allegations were put to them on Thursday. Either way, do you think the government should have another look at the culture of the nation's state broadcaster into how they handle complaints of this nature going forward?
I'm not sure the government has much of a reputation for handling complaints itself, quite honestly. So I'm not sure, that would carry too much credibility. Certainly they need to look at the funding model for the BBC. I've no doubt about that. Certainly they need to keep a beady eye on impartiality. I think Tim Davies is probably doing his best on that one, but it's not wholly achieved. And there are things that the government needs to do, but whether it needs to concern itself in the handling of complaints, unless there is in that handling, as I think there probably was in the Jimmy Savile case, an implication of inappropriate behaviour on the part of the BBC in as much as it knew but did nothing. That I think they can be legitimately concerned about, but not how complaints are handled. They've no reputation themselves for doing that.
Indeed so. And if this story does blow up and plays out very badly for the alleged individual and the organisation, could it threaten the future of the licence fee? Could it essentially remove and dilute the credibility of this annual tax we've all got to pay? Do you think people will say, look, the BBC, look how some of their stars behave, why should I pay this?
Oh, I think, there is an incremental effect here, and every time something like this happens, and something much less serious than this happens, it makes people all the more resentful of the BBC licence fee and of the way the BBC carries on. Nobody now thinks of it, as an institution of total impartiality and trustworthiness and all the things that it used to be once. And nobody thinks of it like that anymore. And then there is, of course, the straw that breaks the camel's back. This may be it, or there may be one lurking in the future, but the time will come when there'll just be a mass rebellion and people will say,
I think the
enough.
reason we're seeing a flurry of MPs across the airwaves is because the government has recognised that this impacts on them as well as on the BBC. This is not only about the identity of the person in the underwear. This is about the BBC's failure. This is about the government's failure, and particularly about the failure of the DCMS to reconvene that investigation into the abuse of control, the prevalence of manipulation in the TV world in 2019, as evidenced by Love Island and the Jeremy Kyle show, and how Love Island actually continues to be presented and on air after that scandal.